Okay, so I have 702 on my computer. Some more people are probably going to be trickling in while we begin this talk. But welcome everyone to the Florida Society of Ethical Ecotourism educational webinar series. So this series will be put on by Florida Sea Grant agents every second Wednesday of the month from 7 to 8 p.m. for the rest of the year. So by the rest of the year, I think we actually meant November. We might actually have a talk in December. However, that is still getting planned. But let me go. Oh, I can't minimize this thing here. Okay. But these webinars are going to be from 7 to 8 p.m. at the second Wednesday of the month. The next one's actually going to be on August 14th, which is plastic pollution, incorporating education and best practices into programming. So we are going to record this webinar, and we ask that if you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, that you do a survey that's going to be linked in the QR code or at the end of the presentation in a QR code format or linked in the description. This survey just helps us improve our programming and continue to justify educational programs like this. So if we've done our calculations right, this should be about 45 minutes. We ask to hold your questions to the very end. But if it's something that's pressing, feel free to put it in the chat and we can address that later on. And assuming you guys can hear me just great, so I will go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. Okay, so put this here, zoom going here, share screen, and cool. Okay. So in this presentation, we are going to talk about a lot of different kind of topics. So hopefully you're not going to get bombarded with too much information. And please feel free to contact me afterwards if you have any more questions about anything that's discussed during this webinar. So we're going to talk about terminology, what are invasive species, how and why they got here, characteristics of invasive species, costs of invasive species, both environmental and ecological, non-native species in Florida. Some species profiles of ones that you might regularly see in the news or in your backyard if you live in South Florida, the sort of the scaly kind of variety. I did my background in zoology, so I'm more of an animal expert, less so a plant expert. And then, sort of what you can do in terms of the invasive species problem that we have in our state. So my name is Michael Sipos. I am the UF IFAS Extension Florida Sea Grant Agent in Collier County. And over here, we have subject matter experts from 4-H, youth development, commercial, residential horticulture, small food systems, all sorts of stuff. So if you have a question about any sort of natural resource topic, horticulture, I encourage you to look into your extension office in your county. Each one of Florida's 67 counties have an extension presence where we do programming that you guys might be actually interested in. So that is my daughter and I holding some cane toads. They are poisonous, not venomous. And if you aren't touching the parotid glands, you're pretty much good to go on being safe. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So before we go out any further, I just want to talk a little about the hosting group that this is on behalf of. So we're doing this presentation on behalf of the Florida Society of Ethical Ecotourism. So this is an organization that was made in 1998 to establish and maintain professional code of ecotourism and ethics in order to encourage awareness and stewardship of Florida's natural heritage. So there are certifications for ecotour operators and memberships for people who just want to support the organization, but you can be ensured that certified ecotour operators that have, gone through the rigorous process of getting that done are adhering to best practices and sort of making that step forward to making sure that we are better stewards of our natural environment. This is all participating businesses, receive support and promotion through a peer network that we have. And it makes it an easy place for people who are, looking for an eco tour that these operations are adhering to these best standards and have those values in place. So, and then there's plenty of educational opportunities associated with these memberships. And the agents that are part of the education series are Kate Rose. She's a scholar. She's a Sea Grant agent in Charlotte County. Carolyn Kovacs, who's actually on this call right now. Say hi, Carolyn. And she is a multi-county agent in the Volusia County area. And then myself, who is down in Collier County, which is Southwest Florida. So why are we talking about invasive species, right? Well, they're everywhere in the news. So these are topics or news headlines I've sort of recorded within the first month of 2024. Marco Eagle, an area newspaper, had it. Miami Herald talking about invasive species. Fox Weather talking about invasive species. Southern Living, it's Fox 13, they're all over the place. And you guys might have, had people from up north or seen them in your backyard and might have not known about like the terminology, like what is an invasive species? What makes a species non-native to invasive or, how they get here? So we'll talk about why Florida is really so special in that aspect. So, usually I have a lot of show of hands, people interacting with me during these seminars and talks, but um, today is virtual, so I'll sort of just get into it. So we have a raccoon, an alligator, and a bird. So when you hear the word invasive, what does that mean, right? Well, an invasive species is a species that occurs outside of, is non-native, so it occurs outside a specific geographic area. It has to be introduced by humans either intentionally or unintentionally, and we'll talk about those introductions. And it has to cause harm or potentially cause harm to the environment, economy, or humans. So without the causing harm aspect, that's just a non-native species, right? And there's a lot of gray kind of area of, super bad for the environment, humans, to just mildly bad. If it has these potential to cause harm economically, human harm, environmental harm, and it's a native species like this raccoon and alligator, you could say an alligator could potentially cause human harm. A raccoon can knock over trash and be sort of a nuisance and cause economic harm. Those are just considered nuisance species in that aspect because they're from here, we're in their backyard. But if it's something that's from other places like cats, these aren't part of our natural ecosystem. Cats have been known to eat up to 2,000 different kind of prey items throughout the world. They're one of the most widely distributed kind of predators. Any kind of island, but somebody probably brought a cat. They eat billions of birds every year. We want to reduce that chance of that happening. So cats are awesome, but keep them indoors so they're not going to be negatively impacting our wildlife. But a little bit further on, we talked about speaking the same language because we have terms like alien or non-indigenous or exotic, and some of those have negative and positive connotations. Exotic sounds cool and fun. Alien sounds like, oh, I don't want that near me. So we want to talk all in the same language so we can communicate most effectively. So native occurs here. Non-native doesn't occur here outside the geographic range where it's naturally from. Introduced, that's something that's been brought over by humans, and that's either intentionally or unintentionally. And an intentional introduction can be, biocontrol, us planting an ornamental plant that just went out of control. An unintentional introduction can be hurricane knocking over cages, or let's say ship ballast water, unprocessed shipping materials. Established, this is when it really becomes an issue. And established is a self-sustaining, reproducing population from out in a specific geographic area. This could be native or non-native, but when it is a non-native animal, that's when it really becomes a problem. And a clue of, seeing an establishment is different size classes. If you have a mama, a baby, and a sibling that's a little older, that means they're reproducing. And that once they've become a reproductively active, it's really hard to get them out of our environment. So we want to control invasive species before they become established. And invasive, we went over that, non-native, introduced by humans, and it has the potential or does cause harm to the environment, economy, or humans. And then nuisance, like I mentioned, would be a native species that have sort of those negative characteristics in that particular environment. Think over a nuisance bear knocking over a trash can. He's from here. He's not invasive, just nuisance that particular individual. So what are some invasive species? A lot of times the media focuses on a lot of creepy crawly ones that you might have seen. People might have even focused a little bit more on that too, like iguanas or cane toads or anoles or Burmese pythons, but they can be anything. Invasive species can definitely be plants. A good clue of, what would be considered an invasive species, if you need to get a topic right off the top of your head, would be a lot of times the country of origin is in the name. So think of Brazilian pepper. These can be super impacting to our environment. Having stuff like allelopathic of effects. Allelopathic is like they're putting out toxins in like the ground around them that could kill other plants because they want to fight for land cover, and that can wipe out our plants that are really important for biodiversity for a myriad of organisms or even other kind of plants that might have symbiotic relationships. So Brazilian peppers, definitely terrible. There are, aquatic weeds, Australian pines, Melaleucas. A lot of times our state spends a lot more money actually maintaining non-native and invasive plants, almost more so than iguanas and all sorts of stuff like that. Um, but then we have they can be mammals, they don't have to be lizards and snakes. The feral hog, they're in over 35 states now. I think there's over 6 million of them, cause billions of dollars of agricultural damage. They cause a lot of disturbance to natural areas, rooting around, ripping up really sensitive habitats. They're disease carriers too, carrying brucellosis and other kind of stuff. So even though sometimes little piggies can be cute, they're definitely a menace to a lot of ecological systems throughout the United States. There are reptiles, iguanas. You can think of other ones that you might have seen around, and these are all, kind of fun tidbits that if you are an ecotour operator, when you're, sort of operating in the field, you could point these out, use these facts to sort of paint a better picture of what is an invasive species to your client, or if you're just an interested kind of person that's listening to this now, there's definitely a lot of table talk, coffee table talk you could have with your neighbors and impress them with some facts. But reptiles out there, gammas, curly tails, all sorts of ones out there. There's amphibians like the cane toad. That's the number one cold call received question I have as an extension agent is this a cane toad? A lot of folks are concerned with them, impacting their dogs and cats and their animals that they have outside. We don't like those free range cats because they could take out birds and stuff. Dogs, you have to really make sure that your dog doesn't have that instinct to go and chase after, these small toads, actually rather large toads compared to our native ones, that are poisonous, not venomous, and they have these poison glands right by the parotid area that are, not good for our pets. They could also be, fish. There are a couple of marine invaders. The lionfish is definitely a poster child for an invasive species, causing economic harm, impacting our reef systems and our commercially and recreationally valuable species that we have, like fishing species. They could be ecologically impacting and they're venomous. So that's predator number one or enemy number one for the state. There are also a lot of freshwater invasive species, not so many marine ones, because if somebody lets go of a marine fish, what are the chances of that fish and that fish meeting each other in the same tidal kind of sequence and reproducing? While if you're in a pond, if somebody dumps a whole fish tank and there's males and females there, that's almost like a little ecosystem where they could just continuously reproduce. And there are about 110 or so non-native fish species that have been spotted in Florida. Most of them are that freshwater. And then we have, they could be also birds. There's definitely monk parrots, parakeets, parrots. Muscovy ducks are a big one too. They could be somebody's pet, but in other kind of areas, they can reproduce sort of out of control. They could harass folks. They can, be disease carriers. They can increase nutrients in ponds from just fecal matter and people feeding them. So this is, I've actually talked about a lot of different kind of invasive species, and I've changed this talk many a time, whether I'm talking to a fishing club, a school, an HOA. There's an invasive species that might be impacting, your activity that you have, but they could also be bugs, and a lot of these damages are really sort of accounted for in like agricultural and forestry in terms of economic impact because it's easy to count, yields or percent coverage of plants. So like little stuff like this that you wouldn't even really think anything about. You see it every day. It's tiny, it might look like a native kind of bug that we have over here, but this is an Asian psyllid. And this Asian citrus psyllid was actually introduced by on a piece of citrus that came in that wasn't checked. Somebody bringing in their favorite kind of food, but it happened to have this bug that introduced the citrus greening disease. And, we were talking about some of the impacts of the other kind of animals, but this thing pretty much brought the Florida citrus industry to its knees, causing over $10 billion in economic damage to our state, losing thousands of jobs out there. So, the key is like we don't really know the impacts these things might have on our economy or our ecology until they are here. And oftentimes that's too late. So this little bug has way more of an impact than some of the other ones I mentioned up there. But they could also be pathogens, fungi, bacteria, viruses. So a whole slew of kind of organisms that can be invasive. Not from here, introduced by us, damage to the economy, humans, and environment and/or environment. So how and why do they get here? If they're non-native, by definition invasive, there's a barrier, whether that's an ocean, a mountain range, or river that they had to cross. Then somebody had to bring them past that, right? So why would somebody bring something over like a barrier? Well, maybe they want it as a pet. Maybe they want to plant it in their front yard. Maybe they're doing biological control, or maybe they're going to eat it. So those are sort of big kind of areas where invasives might have came from. It had to be introduced, so it had to be released in our environment, whether that's planting in your front yard, whether that's that cage toppling over, whether that's ship ballast water, or even non-intentional introductions like I've listened to an interesting talk about like potpourri getting imported from other kind of countries where they might have little pine cones or something that might not get checked as agricultural products, but they could have weevils in there that could knock out pine trees, or crushed cars from other countries that are coming here to be processed. Imagine all the kind of lizards, bugs, animals that could be living in a crushed car, or even roofing tiles, getting imported from Italy. If they're stacked on top of each other, that's a perfect place for little organisms to crawl in, or outside of shipping containers. So there's lots of ways that things can hitchhike over here that unintentionally impact us. Then they have to be established, which is that self-reproducing population. So oftentimes, invasions actually fail because what if you're one thing and you get let go and you live your whole life and you need multiple partners to actually reproduce. But if you're a plant, maybe you can fragment and that's easy for you. Um, Another thing for establishment that might fail is reproductive success. What if you don't have the right uh, plant that you need to reproduce, or the temperature might be different? Or what if you're an alligator and you get let go in Chicago? Like you're okay in the summertime, but come wintertime, it's not a favorable environment. So a lot of introductions actually fail, but when they do take hold, it becomes a real problem. And then spread. Once they spread, then they could be infecting other states, other areas throughout our state, and become more of a thing. So to give you an example, there's about 50,000 non-native species that were introduced to the United States. Most pose little to no threat, but it's also one of the leading causes of extinction. I believe I saw a figure that about 42% of animals and plants on the endangered species list are directly impacted by invasive species. So, that's a big threat to our biodiversity that we have out here. And that's a big driver for our state's economy, especially ecotour operators who might be in this talk right now. It's about $120 billion a year damage to the United States invasive species cause. And that's maybe underreported because a lot of these figures come from, like I mentioned, forestry or agriculture, while we have, this much yield of citrus, and then next year we have less because of this bug that got introduced. It's harder to put a price on like a raccoon or biodiversity that maybe a Burmese python can be impacting, but not a nice clean number out there. And it sounds like it's doom and gloom, and Florida is definitely a special place out there for invasive species. But about 98% of the U.S. food supply, worth over $800 billion a year, is non-native species. So it's that threshold of when does a non-native become invasive. And with proper management, our pets, our dogs and cats, our ornamental landscaping is not a problem, but it's just when it becomes rampant, introduced in the environment, or people, trying to smuggle stuff in or not looking at legislature, that it becomes a more of an issue. So, these are some sort of characteristics of invasive species out there. Like, why are they here? Why are they out competing our native animals or plants? So invasive species oftentimes have faster growth rates. They might have shorter times of reproduction. They might make lots of offspring, like you see these cane toads. They can lay like 8 to 30,000 eggs per sort of spawning cycle, per individual, almost twice a year. It really just depends on the temperature and the rain out there, maybe a beginning and a late kind of spawn. Or they can be great parents. So a lot of these freshwater invasive fish are substrate spawners, they're nest garters that might be a little different kind of behavior characteristic than some of our native kind of fishes out there. So either lots of babies or being great parents are sort of characteristics of that. They can be good at dispersing, whether you're reproducing like a green lip mussel that you can disperse all your eggs into the water column and they get pulled around by the tide and stuff. And that gives the ability to that thing finding an ecological niche that it could take advantage of, right? They could be tolerant of many habitats or environments. That just gives them more areas that they can live, or that tolerant of many environments can be just the ability to live through, being a hitchhiker. If you're living in ballast water, it's not really a nice place to be in, but if you could live temperature swings or salinity swings, like you have a better chance of, getting accidentally introduced and becoming invasive. They could be good at using resources, whether they're omnivorous, whether they can eat a lot of different kind of prey items, or carrion, all sorts of kind of stuff. Lower metabolic needs, that's sort of a easy way of, if you don't have to eat as much, your chances of becoming invasive can be a little higher because you don't have to really, focus on finding your next food item. You can sort of chill and wait until it comes to you. So that's sort of a characteristic too. Cryptic coloration, if something can blend into the environment, it's harder for us to see, pass over it. Like these managers trying to manage them, might not see it. So cryptic coloration is a thing. And then defenses and competition. Some of these might be toxic, like venomous or poisonous that can really make a foothold of, our native kind of critters can't really eat it. So then it sort of explodes in growth or compete for resources. Like I mentioned, that Brazilian pepper having those allelopathic effects, putting sort of toxins in the soil and the surrounding areas that could really knock out its competitors. So we have a Mother of Millions plant over here. This is a plant that's actually sold in like in a lot of Home Depots and Lowe's, and each one of these little leaflets is a potential of becoming a new one of these plants. And they can grow in our dune kind of ecosystems, sort of sandy kind of soils where our native plants are having hard enough time, maintaining a foothold. These are some tilapia nests that are out there. Bluegill also make nests similar to that, the cane toad and green lip mussel. So, we talked about costs and why do we care about costs? Oftentimes, the person who, introduces these plants or animals are not the ones who are paying for the costs. And there's plenty of economic and ecological costs, whether that is, direct damages to the economy, damages to infrastructure out there. If this old world climbing fern can grow all over a dam or a power station or something, that's going to take somebody to, take it down. If somebody's getting a paycheck or salary to do that, negatively impacting our economy. Same thing with management research. There's tens of millions of dollars allocated towards invasive species of research in our state and probably, within the Southeast United States. There could be loss of revenue. Some of these can, maybe shut down businesses. Aquatic weeds can choke up waterways. There was an interesting thing about a brown snake in Guam that climbs up in power lines and shorts out power circuits, and it caused businesses to not have energy and loss of revenue from that. So it was interesting to read about that. And then restoration efforts. We pay a lot of money to restore natural habitats that might be invaded by these invasive species. So managers for that, as well as like some prey items of invasive species like the wood stork. We paid a lot of money for their restoration, but they're a big prey item for Burmese pythons. And we have ecological costs. So, predation, these invasive species like this lionfish can eat, recreational and commercially valuable fish species like yellowtail snapper that people pay money to go catch, eat at a restaurant. Disease transmission, brucellosis we mentioned in hogs, but there's also, the citrus greening like we mentioned, rat lungworm disease. They could compete for resources just by being so many of them. These are actually blue tilapia in a spring out there, and they're one of the most plentiful fish that you can find in that area. So with all that biomass sort of caught up in a non-native animal, not really great for that environment. And then disturbance. So this is definitely reducing biodiversity there. And we're finding out that, all these things are really interconnected. So if we lose a plant that has a pollinator, that if we lose uh, coverage for a plant with a flower and we lose that pollinator, and that pollinator is a food item for another kind of animal, we're losing biodiversity. And our state's economy, about 9.5% of the jobs in Florida are dependent on tourism. And that's about 2 million jobs out there. We had over 137 million visitors come to our state in 2022, spending $124 billion. So a lot of our state's economy is based on tourism, and a lot of that tourism is based on natural areas, beaches, visiting the Everglades, visiting, state parks and stuff, and invasive species are impacting that area. So this is just a quick chart just talking about our most effective tool is prevention, making sure it doesn't get introduced to begin with. Then eradication, you might have seen like the I've Got One app, early detection, rapid response is a big thing, making sure it doesn't spread. Because once it spreads, the management costs go way up, and then the likelihood of you removing it go way down. There hasn't been any successful eradication of any established, that self-reproducing population, established reptile, amphibian, or fish in the state of Florida. So if they're here, they're pretty much here. So we want to make sure we get them in this stage before they start costing us lots of money. So why is Florida so special? We like it here and so do they. So Florida is definitely a huge tourism hotspot. We have over 30 ports of entry, bringing in over 85% of our non-native plants that enter in through the United States, enter in through Florida. Lots of opportunities for hitchhikers, lots of opportunities for those plants to get planted and be pollinator or host for maybe that invasive critter that needs them to survive. 88% of flower imports that enter in through the U.S. come in through Florida. 55% of fruits and vegetables that come in through the United States come in through Florida. We have over 1,400 non-native plant species. So lots of places for these, animals that might have symbiotic relationship with plants. These plants are already non-native. They could be invasive already. That's a good foothold for them. We have a lot of ornamental industry growing these things. We have an extensive pet trade. We have a lot of people moving in here. They're bringing their ideas, they're bringing their pets, they're bringing their, citrus over here, like we mentioned with the Buddha's hand, with bringing that little citrus psyllid. So lots of areas of whoopsies. Then we have a lot of tropical, and we have a tropical and subtropical environment. We have over 1,300 miles of coastline, so lots of ecological niches that invasive can take hold. But it's salty, freshwater, brackish water, swampland, arid kind of environments. Um, and then just to give you an idea of like the scale of the problem in our state, we spend over $500 million a year controlling invasive species. That's an old fact that probably has gone up since I've wrote this presentation about a couple of years ago when I first made it. And about $50 million is just for weed control. So that, shows you the impact of non-native plants that have on our ecosystem. A lot of those can be aquatic weeds where we need navigable waterways, and having too much hydrilla in different areas can choke up propellers, stop trade, and really become a big problem. And then creepy crawlies, that's my specialty. We have 16 native lizard species and 43 established non-natives. So it gives you an idea of scale of like, oh wow, there's, 3 times the amount of non-native lizard species out there, and that's probably what you're encountering most in your tourists and your clients out there. We have 46 native snake species, 4 established non-native, so not that big of, a disparity there, but the ones that we do have are really large snakes, so we'll talk about that. And then 27 native frog species and 4 established non-native frog species. So we'll go into a couple of species profiles that you might have seen in the news that you might have had questions about as an ecotour operator or have questions about yourself. So first up, we have the Burmese python. So in this slide, you'll see sort of the native range. I try to have a little slide picture for that, and then sort of the established range that you can see. So these were first observed in 1979 and introduced by the pet trade. So, like I mentioned, why does somebody want to bring something over? They either want to eat it or they want to pet it or have it in their front yard. So I often sort of get myself in trouble by saying invasive species are cool, and they sort of are cool because people had to think they're neat to bring them over for them to actually be released or intentionally released, right? And some of these are, could be an artifact of the tank buster effect. Kid gets a tank, a lizard this big or a snake this big, and now it gets 10 feet long. Mom doesn't want it. Kid has to do something with it, lets it go. Same thing with fish. Fish are this big when they're in the aquarium. They didn't know they could get 3 or 4 pounds. Start picking on other fish. It's your pet. You want to let it go because you don't want to kill it, but it's definitely impacting our native animals and plants out there. So these were actually imported in the 70s. So about 17,000 snakes were imported from 1970 to 1995, and then about 100,000 snakes almost between 1996 and 2006. So large numbers of snakes were getting imported. They could get up to 18 to 20 feet in long and weigh over 100 pounds. I put the plus over there because they're just a tube. So I always like joke around, and I think some researchers here found like a 30-pound snake or a 35-pound snake with a 30-pound doe and or a fawn, like a white-tailed deer baby in there. So is that snake now 65 pounds, or is that snake now, still 35 pounds? So these guys are good at utilizing that energy to create growth. But that plus pounds could be if there's a female that's gravid. Females get a little bit bigger than males. Gravid means that they have eggs. That'll increase the weight. They're active in daytime or nighttime, depending on season. They're poikilothermic, so their body temperature is around the surroundings. So if it's cold outside, maybe it'll be more active during the daytime when they want to heat up. If there's a cold snap out there and the road's hot, maybe they'll go on the road to heat themselves up that way. They eat mammals, birds, reptilians, everything, so anything that can really sort of fit in its mouth and moves is not safe for Burmese pythons, and they've been sort of decimating the small mammal population in the Everglades. They live in that, sort of marsh swampy area, and we have a perfect environment for them over here in the Everglades. They can lay up to 50 to 100 eggs and live about 15 to 25 years in captivity. So we wanted to talk about, why a certain species is invasive. Remember, they have to cause harm to the economy, environment, or humans. So potentially this has damages to humans because it could bite you and hurt you. But 99% of the time, a snake will leave you alone if you don't approach it. So I haven't heard of an unprovoked attack of any kind of snake out there. A lot of people think like, oh, water moccasins will chase you. Not really, they just stay still. And if you happen to walk on top of them, that's a bad kind of event for you. Same thing with this. Not going to hunt you in your sleep, but if you're trying to mess with it, they do have sharp teeth and they could get large. Damage to the environment. They've decimated the small mammal population. They eat wood storks that we paid over $100 million to restore their natural habitat. They could eat bobcats, panthers, alligators, anything. So definitely damage to the environment. And then damage to the economy. Like there's our tourism industry is based on our environment. these are damaging that. And we spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars each year trying to control these things and do some research on them. Another thing too, I just want to introduce is that there's a snake lungworm alliance and monitoring program out there. These things have also been known to be carriers or the possible introduction of this pentasome parasite that can infect our native species of snakes. So this thing is definitely bringing something bad with it. You can see these pentasomes on roadkill snakes. They're usually crawling out of the mouth. And if you want to get involved in that citizen science program, you could search the Snake Lungworm Alliance and Monitoring Program and collect some roadkill snakes and see if they have the presence of pentasome parasites that the Burmese python introduced. Okay, so next up we have red lionfish. So there's actually about 20 or more species of lionfish. There's three genuses. There's Pterois, like pterodactyl. Pterois actually means winged, and you can see that they have these really big pectoral fins that they sort of guide stuff directly into their mouth that funnels it to it. So the Pterois volitans is a red lionfish. There's also Dendrochirus and Parapterois genuses, right? So different kind of lionfish out there. Most 97% or more of the lionfish that are, in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic are the red lionfish. They're originally from the Pacific area. They were first observed in 1985. That was pre-Hurricane Andrew. A lot of folks think that Hurricane Andrew introduced these things. They were spotted before Hurricane Andrew, but that increased population that could have been put into the environment from Hurricane Andrew, tank skin toppled over, releases, all sorts of stuff, definitely could bolster their genetics and make them more sort of stable to genetic diseases. Although a lot of these things have only had a couple of introductions, and by a couple introductions, you might be mating with your cousins, your sister, all sorts of things that might reduce genetic diversity. And if there's a disease that comes out there, that could wipe them out. And same thing, we've been seeing that a little bit with lionfish with like ulcers coming up on them because there wasn't thousands of people releasing lionfish. How many people have saltwater fish tanks? Might have only been a couple dozen. So definitely genetically bottlenecked. Introduced by the aquarium trade because they look pretty. They could get over 18 inches and 3.7 pounds. That's a state record. There's a lot of tournaments out there by like reef.org or the Emerald Coast Open that people can get involved and harvest lionfish, learn about them. They do a lot of like cooking demonstrations, educational activities with them. Their feeding habits is they just gulp down anything that can fit in their mouth. They live on live bottom and wreck kind of habitats. They can reproduce within their first year of life. They could lay up to 15 to 30,000 eggs and two gelatinous egg masses, monthly in some areas, even more frequently depending on, the water temperature, how much resources they have available. If they have a lot of food and it's nice and, warm down here in the Caribbean, yeah, they could reproduce pretty often. Massachusetts, probably not so much. But they can live in depths of 1,000 feet and tolerate temperatures as low as 50 degrees and handle salinities as low as 4 parts per thousand. So that's almost, less than 1/10 of the salinity of like the ocean. The ocean's about 30 to 35 parts per thousand, and that is grams per liter. So if you think of like a candy bar and a 2-liter soda bottle, that's about as much salt as in salt water normally, but they can live in way less than that. So they're capable of getting distributed a lot through that kind of aspect of being tolerant of those environments. And just by being up to 1,000 feet, we're probably never going to get rid of them just because folks can't dive that deep, and they're primarily harvested by divers. But why are they invasive? Ecological impacts, eating reef grazer species that could clean rocks, that can have coral growth grow on them, aren't there anymore because lionfish are eating them. They're eating valuable recreational and commercially valuable fish species, and they have 16 to 18 venomous spines that are located actually on the dorsal area. The pelvic area, not the pectoral fins. You could actually rub those on you and nothing will happen. But the spines right here, right below it, the pelvic area, they have venom, and so does this anal spine over there. And just talking about the Emerald Coast Open, big Lionfish Removal Awareness Day happens in the Panhandle. This year they had over 11,000 lionfish brought in, so it gives you the scale of problem. It's a really fun event with a lot of educational opportunities, a lot of opportunities to eat lionfish and learn more and help out the environment. So next up, we have cane toads. So this is, like I said, the number one cold call received question I have as an agent here in Collier County is, what's this in my backyard? People are concerned with their dogs and cats, and oftentimes that could be a cane toad that is their concern. So they're from the Amazon River Basin and actually southern Texas. So if you wanted to like say like, is it native to America? Like maybe it's a native to America, but it's not native to our geographic area of Florida. So, definitely more distributed in Central and South America. They're first observed in 1936. They were introduced to take care of the cane beetle because we have lots of sugar cane over here. But how tall is sugar cane? Sugar cane is like 8 to 10 feet tall. How tall are cane toads? They're like this big, right? So they're gonna have to like hop on each other's shoulders or have little cane toad ladders to like get all stages of the sugar cane beetle, and that did not happen. So this biological control failed. They actually thought that they weren't introduced at that time and they were introduced by the pet trade. That was a good kind of cover of saying like, hey, we didn't release thousands of them and that, but whatever. That's 1936 kind of news. So they had multiple introductions, probably just from people having them. They get really large. They're actually larger than all our native species of toads out there. They get about 6 to 9 inches in length. Any toad over 4 inches in Florida is a cane toad. So if it's big, okay, you can remove it. You don't have to even think twice. If it's 4 inches and less, hey, let's look at it a little bit more and make sure that these, are the right ones because we don't want to impact our native southern toads that are most mistaken for cane toads. We also have the Fowler's toad and the oak toad, but the oak toads are much smaller, but they look similar to that. A way that you can differentiate the cane toad between the southern toad is the southern toad has these neural crests between their eyes. Cane toad smooth, right? No crests. And then the cane toads have way larger triangular parotid glands over here. The southern toads have much smaller ones. Color is a really bad kind of indication for these because color, they could have all sorts of phenotypic plasticity. Your skin color might be different than mine. We're all humans, right? So they're active during the day or night, just depending on, what they are. If they're babies, they're more active during the daytime. At nighttime, if they're adults, they're more active during the daytime. And they call this an ontogenetic shift. And an ontogenetic shift is like a behavior change or something that happens from when you're smaller to adult. So, maybe a diet change or like you're acting a little different. But these babies are active during the daytime, so they don't get eaten by their parents because these guys don't have great eyesight. So you're active at nighttime, and if you're this big and you see something this big hopping around, mom is going to eat you unknowingly. So that's a sort of a cool, neat kind of characteristic I learned about them. They could eat a lot of different prey items. They're omnivorous. They hunt, they scavenge. They're more so in urban and suburban areas. So a lot of these non-invasive species actually inhabit urban and suburban areas, right? Because that's where people were that introduced them, right? Also, these urban and suburban areas, we knocked out all the trees. We, dug big holes that we think are lakes that are perfect environments for these cane toads because we got rid of all their competition, their predators, and we made shallow water bodies that have street lights all over the place that are like vending machines for these cane toads. Bug flies into a light, falls down, they all just eat it, right? So by sort of restoring natural habitats, we might push invasive species away, because that gives a good foothold for our native kind of critters. While uh, development is like a clean canvas that invasive species can paint its picture on. So they can lay 8 to 30,000 eggs per individual per year, multiple times a year in some cases, and they could live 10 to 15 years in captivity. So we're never really going to get rid of them. You can make your cane toad, your house less cane toad friendly by, trimming your bushes a little higher, getting rid of standing bodies of water, using bug lights. But now if they're here, we have to sort of make sure our pets don't really get into them, because that's their number one kind of negative impact. Why are they invasive? Damage to the economy. We pay money for people to remove them, right? We pay vet bills for people who have pets that get impacted. Damage to humans, they're poisonous, but nobody's really like eating cane toads, right? But they're emotionally damaging us if they're killing our dogs and cats. And then damage to environment, they eat a lot of different things, but they're mostly in these residential areas, right? So they're not, if you go in the middle of the Everglades and find a cane toad, that would be great. Like that's hard to do because we have all our native kind of critters out there. So mostly the damage is to us and our pets, but they're not good to have out there. So don't, release animals like cane toads. But our native actual critters have evolved with species similar to cane toads, and they can eat them. But our pet dogs and cats, they didn't. So, black racer could probably eat one of those things. Crow can eat one of these things. Dog or cat, no. Yeah. So green iguana, you see them all over the place. There's probably an iguana ecotour hunter over here. Hopefully, I advertise on that page. But their ranges from the Caribbean, South America, first observed in 1964. Definitely pet trade. Like, who wouldn't want a giant Godzilla-looking lizard that eats plants? It's easy for us to actually feed them. But they get big. So like mom said, kid, you gotta get rid of them, and they released them, and they're pretty resilient because they can eat a wide variety of these things. They eat a lot of vegetation, insects, eggs, and vertebrates. A lot of times there's that ontogenetic shift, that change from small to large when with age. When you're small, you're growing. You need protein. When you're bigger, you don't really need to grow as much, so you might switch more to that herbivory diet. They have a lot of different things they could eat. They could live in the ground, trees, suburban, agricultural, urban areas. They can make up to 14 to 76 eggs, just depending on the size of the female. Live 10 to 19 years. So why are they invasive? Well, they are, damage to humans. They could bite you, whip you, but if you leave them alone, they're probably going to leave you alone too. Damage to the environment. Well, there's a lot of them. Whenever there's a lot of something that's non-native, it's not really good for our environment to try to support that because, we're probably taking resources from our other stuff. Damage to the environment too. They've been known to eat a tree snail and a tree snail that's endangered and a flower that hosts a Miami blue butterfly that I think that's endangered. Tree snails are getting impacted by another invasive species more so than these, which are the New Guinea flatworm. Look them up, they're terrible. But a lot of other things can eat tree snails and flowers too. But more so, it's just, and then damage to the economy. There's FWC quotes, I think damage to a dam and shorting electrical outlet things, native kind of critters can do that too. This particular occurrences that they quoted were, a non-native animal that did it. Definitely not good, but you always think of that uh gray kind of infrastructure. Like how close are you to the black or white in terms of how invasive are you? Damage environment, economy, or humans? Then I just wanted to talk about tilapia really quick because we do a big invasive fish roundup, and a lot of people eat tilapia. They know tilapia, but they didn't know that there's over like 100 species of tilapia. So it's almost a generic term for a cichlid that's in the Middle East or Africa. There's definitely lots of African cichlids that aren't tilapia. There's cichlids in the Middle East that aren't tilapia, but in Florida, we have 6 established or potentially established species. So we have the blue tilapia, the Nile tilapia that actually look very similar and oftentimes they hybridize. We have the spotted tilapia, the black chin tilapia, the Mozambique tilapia, and the hornet tilapia. And these guys are great parents. That's why they're, invasive, not invasive in that aspect, but why they really took hold is they take care of their babies. Whether they're substrate spawner and they guard a nest, or there's some tilapia that are like the blue tilapia and the Nile tilapia, where the female actually has all the fry come into her mouth. And the safest place you can be as a baby is inside your mom. So whether that's, going inside the mouth of the mom if a predator is coming or that. And then you also eat lower on the food chain, eating detritus, that's decaying plant matter, organic matter, eating bugs, eating plants. So there's plenty of that, lots of resources for them, so like, why are they bad if they're eating algae? Well, they sort of eat low on the food chain and then they become really big biomass of something. And like I said, if there's a lot of something that's non-native, not really that great, right? They could be disturbing different environments, sort of rooting around in the substrate, causing, sedimentation to go up, eroding shorelines a little bit, more so with the plecos, those armored catfish that burrow and stuff. These are just more, just so many of them, so much so that the spotted tilapia over here, FWC introduced the peacock bass in 1984 to control the population of spotted tilapia because they estimated about 25% of the biomass in like the Miami-Dade canals were this fish. That's not native. 25% of the whole biomass. That's not a good thing. So they introduced the peacock bass that's a non-native species that now has regulations and people come all over the place to try to catch those. Other ones like this black chin tilapia, I get a lot of reports of people saying, "What is this?" Because you can find those in full strength seawater. You can go underneath mangroves and find that. Not so much the blue in the Niles, but there's lots of little ecological niches that these cichlids can really take hold. And other cichlids like the Mayan cichlids are, even more distributed in some areas. So why did people introduce them? Aquaculture, for food, these you've eaten tilapia probably, whether it's a food fish product. But which species of tilapia did you eat? Was it a blue? Was it a Nile? They don't say, they just say tilapia. Or ornamental. This is sort of a pretty fish, but people might have not known it got this big, or might have not, maybe they got tired of it, maybe it fought with their other fish, they let it go. That's how they became a problem. Yeah. So what's happening now? We have a firmer awareness of the issue. You guys are listening to me. Thank you for doing so. Thank you for coming today. So hopefully you'll tell a friend about this program, share a couple of fun facts that you learned today. Firmer awareness of the issue. We have a grasp on what other invasive species can do, so we're looking in the legislature and making sure like, hey, does somebody really need like a rock python or anaconda now, if we know that the Burmese do that? So maybe we have like conditional kind of requirements or new housing requirements. Like I think some of these snakes that are now conditional that people have to register, really, really big constrictors. If a hurricane comes, they might have to put it in a bag and put it in a tank instead of having that tank just around that if your house gets run over by a tornado, now this snake is loose. But now if there's, a couple bags around it, he's there, he's safe, we're all safe. Restoration efforts, if we bring natural habitats back, maybe we bring our natural flora and fauna back with that too. Research, we have a detection, early detection, rapid response, environmental DNA to see what's in our environment. We have dogs, biological control, biochemicals. Now they're doing a lot of stuff with CRISPR, with like, hey, there's something called the green zebra mussel. Oh, the zebra mussels are here and now it died. But what was in the environment that killed those zebra mussels? They could do like bacterial kind of, cultures, see that like maybe that toxin that killed them and sort of bioreplicate it and maybe control other kind of areas. Emerging technologies that's both interesting and scary and cool at the same time, something to look out for. And then, different cane toad traps tracking. This is a camera trap looking at a tegu eating a crocodilian nest. We're learning more every day and we could help prevent stuff for introductions from, what we've learned. So what you can do, either as an eco tour operator, as a scientist, as an individual, you can get involved. So a big thing is early detection, rapid response. Like I mentioned, if we could prevent the spread, tell people, hey, I saw something different over here. Researchers and managers can go and make sure it doesn't, become established, which is that replication population, that then it becomes an issue. You can volunteer with FWC. Like we have that invasive fish roundup event every springtime in Collier County, Lee County, Hendry County with the Southwest Florida SISMA. SISMA stands for Cooperative Invasive Management Area, and there might be a SISMA in your area if you want to get involved with weed wrangles, helping the environment, chopping down invasive trees, all sorts of cool stuff. You can attend roundups, like I mentioned. You can be a nuisance wildlife control operator. Some folks, you can be like a licensed python remover that the state will pay you to remove some snakes if you bring them in. Responsible pet ownership and just like ornamental ownership, whether, look at the legislation in your county and the state to make sure you're not bringing an invasive or potentially invasive plant. There's exotic pet amnesty days. If you can't take care of your turtle anymore, don't let it go in the pond. You could give it to FWC on these days. They'll find a good home for it. You can remove these yourself. There's some areas that, hunting might not be allowed, but hunting invasive species might be allowed. Using a pole spear for a lionfish in some areas that you can't fish or spearfish, sometimes that's allowed, or removing them on like state lands that might be protected in some areas, but targeting invasive species might be allowed. Think natural, by doing Florida-friendly landscaping, we're reducing our environmental impact. We're increasing the amount of native kind of plants that, our native pollinators need, our habitats thrive with. So think natural. Then if you have invasive species in your area, you can do exclusion. So you can trim up your bushes higher if you're concerned with cane toads, make sure there's no wood piles or leaf piles or debris piles that they can live in. Bug lights, no standing bodies of water, all those kind of things can really reduce, the chance of a cane toad being in your front yard. So when your Jack Russell Terrier runs out, he's not going to nuke himself. And educate yourself and others about this problem. So I just really wanted to go over before we end off is the I've Got One app. So this is a managing tool that goes into something called EDMAPS, which EDMAPS stands for Early Detection Rapid Response kind of stuff. Look it up. It's pretty cool because you can see where these invasive species have been located. Now with there's like an emerging industry of going hunting for invasive species. People like to go and target non-native fish. You could eat potentially some of them and they're tasty. You could use them as compost, feed them to pets. But if you want to see what's in your area, download this app, and then you could actually see what invasive species have been sort of shown in your area. And if you're curious of what people reported, you can log some yourself, which helps researchers. And then there's a cool directory because I know a lot about invasive species. I don't know everything about invasive species, especially those plants, like I mentioned, bugs, all sorts of stuff, right? So there's a cool like directory where there's pictures that you can sort of scroll through and hey, I saw this lizard. What what does it look like? Well, there's a picture of all the lizards over there, and you can sort of cross-reference yourself and make sure it's an invasive or not. And it's a good resource. And I encourage you to look at this or the web application, which is that EdMaps, which it's neat to see where they've been spotted, and we've used those county maps in the presentation today. But with that, I am done. So Carolyn's gonna put a QR or a link to a survey. I please encourage you to take this survey. It helps us know what you guys gain from this presentation, what you guys want to see. If you're gonna use some of the information that you learned today, and it helps support us, further making these talks. So I definitely appreciate you scanning that QR code or doing the link in the chat. And with that, I'll answer any questions. Look up for the August 14th webinar that we have on plastic pollution with Carolyn, and that'll be a good one. And we have these talks all throughout the year. So go to that Florida Sea website and sign up for the next one. But with that, I'll take any questions. And one quick aside too, we have the Florida Friendly Angler. This is a angler education opportunity. It's free, it's narrated, it's online. We have both English and Spanish programs. You can scan that QR code and access those. And I will try to get the registration information from everybody and send you a follow-up email with some of these resources I might have talked about during the talk, as well as a video recording link, hopefully within the next couple days. So keep a lookout in your inbox. You'll have my email address then if you have any questions about invasives. And I definitely appreciate everybody showing up today. So with that, I will actually try to stop recording and we'll answer any questions.